Before we dive in, pause for just a second. If this topic already has you thinking, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe. Your thoughts help shape this conversation, and we're just getting started. It starts with silence. No buzz of traffic, no ping from your phone, no flicker from your smart devices. The digital world has gone still. You step outside, nothing works. Planes are grounded. Deliveries stopped, maps blank. Banks offline. No warning, no countdown. Just global confusion. The reason? Something happened in space. The satellite web that powers our planet just vanished. This isn't science fiction. It's a chillingly possible future. Because everything from your GPS to stock exchanges relies on a fragile network of machines orbiting above us. And today, one private company controls most of it. In the next 5 years, more than 50,000 satellites will flood our skies. Tens of thousands under a single private network, not owned by governments, not regulated by global bodies, controlled by business interests. That's not just innovation, that's power, real power. So who's building this empire above Earth? How did they get there so fast? And most importantly, what happens if they pull the plug? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the silent race for space control. What you're about to learn will change the way you look at the sky forever. Welcome to the new battleground. Welcome to the empire in orbit. To understand how we got here, we need to go back. Not to the Cold War space race between superpowers, but to a quieter revolution. For decades, satellites were the exclusive domain of nations. They were huge, expensive, and took years to build and launch. Think of them like massive, custom-built mainframes, each one a national project. A single weather satellite could cost billions. A spy satellite, even more. This was the old space. Slow, deliberate, and prohibitively expensive for anyone without a government's backing. Then, everything changed. The miniaturization revolution that shrunk our phones and computers finally came for space. Suddenly, satellites could be the size of a shoebox, a loaf of bread, or even a coffee mug. These were CubeSats, and they weren't just smaller. They were exponentially cheaper. A university could build one. A small startup could launch a handful. But launching was still the bottleneck. You had to piggyback on a massive rocket carrying a primary, billion-dollar payload. Your little CubeSat was just a passenger, subject to the main mission's schedule and destination. Then came the game changer: reusable rockets. One company, led by a visionary but controversial figure, cracked the code. By landing and reusing their rocket boosters, they slashed the cost of getting to orbit. It was like going from chartering a private jet for a single trip to buying a ticket on a commercial airline. Space became accessible, and with this newfound accessibility, a new ambition was born. Why launch just one satellite when you can launch dozens at a time? Why launch dozens when you can launch thousands? This is where the idea of the mega constellation took hold. The plan was audacious. Blanket the Earth in a low-orbit web of small, interconnected satellites to provide high-speed internet to every corner of the globe. From the most remote village in the Himalayas to a research station in Antarctica. The promise was utopian, connecting the unconnected, democratizing information, and creating a truly global village. The first launches were stunning. A single rocket deploying 60 satellites at once, unfurling like a string of pearls across the night sky. It was a spectacle, and it was just the beginning. Today, that one company's constellation has thousands of active satellites, and it's growing with every launch. They've become the dominant player, not just in satellite internet, but in launch services overall. Their network is already being used in critical situations, from disaster zones where traditional infrastructure is down, to active war zones where it provides vital communication for military forces. This is where the utopian vision starts to get complicated. This single, privately owned network has become a piece of critical, global infrastructure. Think about that. The internet backbone for remote regions, a tool for emergency services, a military asset all controlled by a single CEO and a board of directors. They can choose who gets access. They can set the price. And, theoretically, they can turn it off. This isn't just a commercial service anymore. It's a new form of geopolitical power, an empire built not on land, but in the orbital lanes above our heads. So, who exactly holds this power? The company is SpaceX, and the man is Elon Musk. His ambition is legendary, famously aiming to make humanity a multiplanetary species. The satellite constellation, Starlink, is a key part of that plan. It's a massive revenue generator intended to fund his Mars colonization dreams. But while the focus is often on Mars, the implications for Earth are far more immediate. With over 6,000 satellites already in orbit and plans for up to 42,000, Starlink is by far the largest constellation ever built. It dwarfs the networks of entire nations. This gives Musk an unprecedented level of influence. During the conflict in Ukraine, Starlink became a lifeline for the Ukrainian military, allowing them to coordinate drone strikes and maintain communication when other systems failed. But it also meant that a private citizen was making decisions that could tip the scales of a major international war. There were reports of him personally denying requests to extend service to certain strategic areas. fearing it could escalate the conflict. A decision of that magnitude, traditionally made by heads of state, was in the hands of a tech billionaire. This raises a crucial question: who regulates this? The answer is alarmingly vague. International space law, like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, was written for a different era. It was designed for nations, not corporations. It talks about space being the province of all mankind, but has few concrete mechanisms to govern private commercial activity on this scale. National bodies like the FCC in the United States grant licenses for launches and spectrum use, but their jurisdiction is limited. There is no global traffic cop for space, no international body with the power to enforce rules on a mega constellation that operates across every border. So what happens if this private empire decides to act in its own interest, rather than the public good? What if they decide to block a competitor's service, or raise prices exorbitantly for a developing nation that has become dependent on their network? Or what if the system is hacked? A single point of failure controlled by one company creates a vulnerability on a global scale. We've concentrated immense power into a single private entity, with very few checks and balances, and SpaceX isn't the only player in this new race, though they are the leader. Amazon is building its own constellation, Project Kuiper. China is planning 2 massive state-backed mega-constellations of its own, aiming to compete directly. Europe is trying to catch up. The sky is about to get very, very crowded. We're talking about a future with potentially over 100,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. This creates a whole new set of problems. First, there's the issue of space debris. Every satellite has a limited lifespan. When they die, they can become uncontrolled space junk, zipping around the Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. A collision between 2 satellites, or a satellite and a piece of debris, could set off a chain reaction, a scenario known as the Kessler syndrome. This cascading series of collisions could create a cloud of debris so dense that it makes low Earth orbit unusable for generations. It would effectively trap us on Earth, unable to launch new satellites for GPS, weather forecasting, or communication. The very technology meant to connect us could end up imprisoning us. Then there's the impact on something more fundamental: our view of the night sky. Astronomers were the first to sound the alarm. These thousands of bright, moving satellites are already photobombing scientific observations, creating streaks across images from ground-based telescopes. They are fundamentally changing the appearance of the night sky for everyone on Earth. For millennia, humans have looked up at the stars for navigation, inspiration, and a sense of our place in the cosmos. Are we willing to trade that pristine view for faster internet? It's a debate we are only just beginning to have. But the satellites are already launching, week after week. The sky is being industrialized before our very eyes, without broad public consent or discussion. This isn't just a technical problem, it's a cultural and philosophical one. The stars belong to everyone, but the orbital highways are being claimed by a few powerful corporations. So, what is the endgame here? We are hurtling towards a future where our global digital infrastructure is layered in orbit, controlled by a handful of private companies and competing nations. This orbital real estate is the new high ground. Controlling it means controlling the flow of information, finance, and even military power on the ground below. It's a new dimension of power that we are still struggling to comprehend, let alone regulate. The scenario we started with, a sudden global blackout, might not come from a solar flare or a coordinated attack. It could come from a corporate decision, a software bug, or a business rivalry that spills over into space. When one company has the power to connect or disconnect entire nations, who holds them accountable? Do we need a new outer space treaty for the 21st century? A World Trade Organization for orbit? These are no longer theoretical questions. The empire in orbit is being built right now, piece by piece, launch by launch. Its architecture will define power in this century. It will determine who is connected and who is left behind, who sees the stars, and who sees a web of machines. The silent race for space is the most important story you might not be following, and it's happening right above your head. What you learned today is just the beginning. The decisions we make nor fail to make will shape the future of our planet and our access to the universe beyond. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. The sky will never look the same again, will it? If this opened your eyes, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we have so much more to explore. What do you think is the biggest risk of this new space race? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. Before we dive in, pause for just a second. If this topic already has you thinking, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe. Your thoughts help shape this conversation, and we're just getting started. It starts with silence. No buzz of traffic, no ping from your phone, no flicker from your smart devices. The digital world has gone still. You step outside, nothing works. Planes are grounded, deliveries have stopped, maps are blank, banks are offline. There was no warning, no countdown, just global confusion. The reason? Something happened in space. The satellite web that powers our entire planet just vanished. This isn't science fiction, it's a chillingly possible future. Because everything from your GPS to the global stock exchanges relies on a fragile network of machines orbiting high above us. And today, one private company controls most of it. In the next 5 years, more than 50,000 satellites will flood our skies, tens of thousands of them under a single private network. Not owned by governments, not regulated by international bodies, controlled entirely by business interests. That's not just innovation, that's power, real power. So who's building this empire above Earth? How did they get there so fast? And most importantly, what happens if they decide to pull the plug? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the silent race for space control. What you're about to learn will change the way you look at the sky forever. Welcome to the new battleground. Welcome to the empire in orbit. A decade ago, satellites were slow, expensive, government-run, and distant. Think of those huge, clunky machines that took years to build and launch. Today, it's a full-blown private space race and one company is launching new satellites. Not every few months, but every few weeks. The old geostationary satellites hovered 22,000 miles above us. At that distance, there's a noticeable lag, a delay that's far too slow for our modern real-time demands. But now, we have new constellations of low Earth orbit satellites, or LEOs. They operate just a few hundred miles up, blanketing the globe. This proximity delivers faster internet, real-time coverage, and a completely different kind of global control. And it's not just about getting online in the middle of nowhere. Entire industries are being reshaped right before our eyes. Farmers are now monitoring their crops, using live satellite feeds, optimizing water and fertilizer with pinpoint accuracy. Insurance companies use space-based data to process claims from natural disasters almost instantly. Supply chains, emergency services, even modern war zones now rely on instant, reliable satellite communications. The scale of this operation is staggering. These launches aren't rare, monumental events, anymore they're routine, almost mundane. The network grows, invisibly but relentlessly, day by day. But here's where it gets serious. The business model, isn't just about providing internet access. Those terminals, the satellite dishes people install on their roofs, they're being sold at a loss. The real profit isn't in the hardware, it's in the data control. It's in coverage dominance. One company is already making more money from its satellite internet service than from its famous rocket launches, and it's just getting started. This isn't about innovation anymore. It's about who owns the fundamental infrastructure of our future, who controls the switch. We're talking about a level of centralized power that no single entity, public or private, has ever held. Imagine a world where one company can decide who gets access to information and who doesn't, who can connect to the global economy and who is left in the dark. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, but it's the reality we're building right now. Think about the military implications. Access to satellite communication and surveillance is a game changer in any conflict. In recent events, we've seen how one company's satellite network became a critical asset for a nation under attack, providing vital communication lines when all other infrastructure was destroyed. The CEO of that company effectively had the power to influence the course of a war, a decision that has historically been reserved for world leaders and generals. He could turn the service on or off over a conflict zone. That's a geopolitical power that no corporation has ever wielded before. This raises an uncomfortable question. Should a private individual, no matter how brilliant or well-intentioned, hold that kind of power? What happens when their business interests conflict with a nation's security interests, or with global stability? There are no international laws or regulations that are equipped to handle this new reality. We are in uncharted territory. Governments are playing catch-up, trying to figure out how to regulate a technology that is evolving faster than they can legislate. And what about the data itself? These satellites aren't just bouncing signals. They're collecting vast amounts of information about what's happening on the ground. They can see troop movements, monitor shipping lanes, track agricultural output, and observe industrial activity. The company that owns the network owns that data. That knowledge is incredibly valuable, not just for commercial purposes, but for intelligence and strategic advantage. Who gets to see that data? Who ensures it's used responsibly? Right now, the answer is largely the company itself. This concentration of power isn't just a risk, it's a strategic vulnerability for the entire world. If one network becomes the backbone of global communication, what happens if it's hacked? Or if the company goes bankrupt? Or if its leader decides to use it as leverage in a political dispute? We are building a system with a single point of failure, and that point is a private enterprise driven by profit and the vision of one person. The more we rely on this single network, the more fragile our interconnected world becomes. Let's also talk about the space environment. This rapid expansion isn't happening in a vacuum. Low Earth orbit is becoming crowded, with tens of thousands of new satellites being launched. The risk of collisions increases exponentially. A single collision could create a cloud of debris, setting off a chain reaction, an event known as the Kessler syndrome that could render low Earth orbit. Welcome back. We're deep diving into the hidden race that's redefining power, technology, and even what it means to be a nation. If you're finding this journey into the new space race as mind-bending as we are, do us a huge favor. Smash that like button. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and make sure you're subscribed. You are a crucial part of this community, and together we're uncovering the biggest invisible story in tech. Your support helps us keep digging deeper. Alright, let's get into it. Let's talk about power. And no, I don't mean electricity, I'm talking about control. Absolute, unfiltered control. Picture this. Right now, as we speak, a single private company owns and operates a fleet of over 8,000 satellites orbiting Earth. Let that number sink in for a moment. That's more than any single country. More than Russia, more than China, more than the United States. This isn't just about providing internet. It's about holding a switch. A switch that can turn on or turn off digital access for entire regions, anywhere in the world, at a moment's notice. Think about the implications. For decades, telecommunications have been the domain of national governments and heavily regulated industries. Countries built their own infrastructure, laid their own cables, and set their own rules. It was a matter of national security and sovereignty. But what happens when that infrastructure is no longer on the ground? What happens when it's floating thousands of miles above our heads? Owned not by a government accountable to its people, but by a corporation accountable to its shareholders. This company, SpaceX with its Starlink constellation, has single-handedly built the largest and most advanced communications network humanity has ever seen. It's a web of light, blanketing the globe. And here's the really wild part. The strategic masterstroke that left everyone else in the dust. They didn't even need to make a profit at first. Their playbook was brilliantly simple and brutally effective. It's a strategy we've seen in other tech sectors, but never on this scale. First, they focused on the hardware. They developed reusable rockets to dramatically lower the cost of launching anything into orbit. This was the game changer. While everyone else was treating rockets like disposable lighters, SpaceX was building a reusable fleet. This allowed them to launch their satellites faster and cheaper than anyone could have imagined. Step 1. Control the access to space. Step 2 was to sell the user terminals, the little satellite dishes, at a loss. They subsidized the cost of the hardware to get it into as many hands as possible, as quickly as possible. This is the classic razor and blades model. You give away the razor to sell the blades. In this case, they subsidized the dish to sell the monthly subscription. They weren't just selling a product. They were building a user base, a network effect that would become nearly impossible to compete with. They were focused on market domination, not immediate profitability. Their strategy was to dominate the skies first, then worry about the balance sheet later. And guess what? It worked. Flawlessly. While traditional telecom companies and even governments were stuck in committees, debating regulations and funding, Starlink was launching 60 satellites at a time, week after week. They achieved critical mass before the competition even got off the launch pad. Now, everyone else is playing a desperate game of catch-up. Amazon, with its immense resources, is pouring billions into Project Kuiper, its own planned constellation of over 3,200 satellites. They see the writing on the wall. They know that whoever controls the digital pipelines of the future controls commerce, information, and influence. It's a race they can't afford to lose. Then you have players like the UK's one. They're taking a slightly different approach, targeting governments, militaries, and enterprise clients, rather than just individual consumers. They understand that this new frontier isn't just about providing faster streaming for Netflix. It's about national security. It's about ensuring a country's critical infrastructure, from military communications to financial transactions, can't be switched off by a foreign entity. This isn't a consumer tech race. It's a geopolitical arms race, fought with satellites instead of missiles. It's a battle for digital sovereignty. Let's play out a scenario. Imagine a country facing a major natural disaster, a cyber-attack that takes down its ground-based internet infrastructure, or even internal conflict. The country goes dark. Communication grinds to a halt. The economy is paralyzed. The government is cut off from its people and the outside world. Within hours, pallets of satellite internet kits arrive. They're distributed to hospitals, government offices, and relief workers. Suddenly, the country is back online. Critical services are restored. The government can coordinate a response. It's a miracle, a lifeline provided by a private company. But here's the question we need to ask. Who's really in charge now? Is it the nation's telecom ministry? Is it the president or the prime minister? Or is it a boardroom located halfway across the world that just became the most critical piece of that nation's infrastructure? The company that restored the internet now has immense leverage. They control the flow of information. They can, in theory, prioritize traffic, monitor communications, or, if they chose, shut it all down again. This is where business strategy morphs into raw geopolitical power. The lines become blurred. A CEO's decision can have a greater impact on a country's fate than an act of its own parliament. We saw this play out in Ukraine, where Starlink became an indispensable tool for the military. but also a point of contention and negotiation between Elon Musk and the US government. The power to say yes or no to service in a war zone is a power no CEO has ever wielded before, and we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the other risks. What about the black box problem? These satellite systems are incredibly complex. They are, for all intents and purposes, black boxes. We, the public, and even many governments, have very little insight into how they truly operate, what their vulnerabilities are, or how their data is managed. What happens if a system of this scale goes down? Not because of a decision in a boardroom, but because of a technical glitch. A solar flare, or worse, a sophisticated Imagine a hostile actor gaining control of a network that thousands of businesses and millions of people rely on. It would be a catastrophe of unprecedented scale. The potential for disruption, for espionage, for chaos, is enormous. We are placing an incredible amount of trust in the security and resilience of systems that are privately owned and operated with limited public oversight. This isn't a hypothetical risk. It's an eventuality we need to prepare for. The sky is no longer just a vast, empty space. It's the new high ground. It's the new battlefield, and the rules of engagement are being written right now, not by treaties and diplomats, but by billionaires and engineers. This conversation is just getting started. In our next episode, we're going to dive into if you're still here, that's incredible. Welcome to the final part of our series, where we pulling back the curtain on the side of space that almost no one talks about, but everyone, and I mean everyone, needs to understand. If this journey has been as eye-opening for you as it has been for us, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment with your biggest takeaways so far, and make sure you're subscribed. Let's finish this strong. Over the last 5 parts, we've seen the dream of space become a reality. We've built tens of thousands of satellites. We're launching them faster than ever before. We're developing ways to service them, refuel them, and extend their lives right there in orbit. We're even sending civilians on joyrides to the edge of the atmosphere. On the surface, it's a story of incredible progress, a testament to human ingenuity. But there's a massive, looming problem we haven't solved. In fact, we're making it worse with every single launch. The growing, unregulated chaos just a few hundred miles above our heads. Think about it. Every rocket that goes up, every satellite deployed, adds another object to an already crowded sky. It's like building a skyscraper in the middle of a highway during rush hour. For decades, we treated low Earth orbit like an infinite junkyard. Old rocket stages, dead satellites, even tools dropped by astronauts are all still up there, whipping around the planet at over 17,000 miles per hour. That's 10 times faster than a rifle bullet, and the problem is getting exponentially worse. Let me give you a chilling example. In early 2022, a geomagnetic storm, a burst of energy from the sun, hit Earth. It wasn't even a particularly strong one, but it was enough to increase the density of the upper atmosphere, creating just a little more drag. That tiny bit of extra friction was a death sentence for a batch of newly launched Starlink satellites. 40 of them were wiped out in a single event, burning up as they fell back to Earth. 40 satellites? Gone. Just like that, from one solar flare. Now, what happens when it's not a solar storm, but something we create ourselves? This brings us to the nightmare scenario that space agencies have been quietly dreading for years. The Kessler syndrome. It's a concept named after NASA scientist Donald Kessler, who proposed it back in 1978. The idea is simple, but its implications are terrifying. Imagine a single satellite explodes or collides with a piece of debris. That one event doesn't just create one problem. It sends thousands, even hundreds of thousands of tiny, lethal fragments flying in every direction. Each one of those fragments becomes a bullet, a miniature missile capable of destroying another satellite it hits. When that next satellite is hit, it too shatters, creating thousands more pieces of debris, and so on, and so on. It's a chain reaction, a cascade of destruction where debris creates more debris, which triggers more collisions, which creates even more debris. The process feeds itself, growing exponentially until low Earth orbit, the most valuable real estate in space, becomes completely unusable. It would be a prison of our own making, a permanent cloud of high-velocity junk encircling our planet, making future launches impossible and trapping us on Earth. What would that actually mean for you and me? Think about your daily life. That phone in your pocket, it relies on GPS satellites for navigation. Your bank transactions, the global financial system, it depends on satellites for precise timing signals. The internet you're using to watch this video, especially in remote areas. Increasingly, it's beamed down from space. Weather forecasting, disaster response, global communications, all of it is tied to that fragile infrastructure in orbit. Now, imagine it all just gone, vanished in a fog of our own trash. It's not science fiction. It's a very real possibility that we are actively contributing to every single day. But physical debris is only half the story. The other, perhaps more immediate threat, is invisible. I'm talking about hacking. Cyber attacks on satellites are not a future hypothetical. They have already happened. We've seen state-sponsored groups interfere with satellite signals, jam communications, and even spoof GPS data to trick systems into thinking they're somewhere else. Imagine a self-driving truck network being rerouted off a cliff, or a fleet of cargo ships being guided into hostile waters. The systems that control these billion-dollar assets in space were often designed decades ago, with security as an afterthought. A single vulnerability, one line of bad code, could potentially allow a malicious actor to take control of a satellite. They could turn it off, change its orbit to collide with another, or even use its own systems to broadcast false information. A sophisticated attack could take down entire constellations, crippling the military, economic, and civil systems that entire nations rely on. The digital battlefield is no longer just on Earth, it's being fought in orbit. And here's the most unsettling part of it all. There are no universal laws governing any of this. In the vastness of space, there is no air traffic control. There's no international agreement that says, "This is your lane, you can't fly here." There's no sheriff. It's the Wild West, all over again. The company or the country that gets there first, that builds the biggest network, that establishes the infrastructure, they're the ones who get to make the rules. We're in the middle of a gold rush, but the gold isn't a shiny metal. It's orbital slots, it's radio frequencies, it's strategic control of the high ground. The sky is no longer just a canvas for astronomers or a frontier for scientific discovery. It's a battleground for power, for profit, and for geopolitical dominance. And as private companies and rival nations race to stake their claim, the principles of peaceful exploration are being pushed aside. Every time we look up at the night sky, we should remember it's not empty anymore. It's already full. It's contested territory. Thanks for watching this series all the way to the end. If you made it to part 6, you were one of the few who is really paying attention to what's happening above our heads. The story of space is no longer just about rockets and astronauts. It's about power, control, and the future of our connected world. Subscribe for more deep dives like this. And please, comment your thoughts below. I want to know what you think. Share this video with someone who still thinks space is just a distant dream. Because the truth is, the next great empire isn't being built on Earth. It's being built right above it. Still here? Good, because the rabbit hole goes much, much deeper. If this series is making you see the world differently, let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because you're going to want to know what's coming next. Alright, let's dive back in. We've talked a lot about what the private sector is building, but what about the things they don't control? Yet let's talk about GPS. That little blue dot on your map, it's powered by a multi-billion-dollar military-grade infrastructure. And it's not just one. The United States has GPS. Russia has its own system called GLONASS. Europe has Galileo, and China operates Beidou. These aren't just convenient apps on your phone. Think of them as strategic, nation-defining assets. Why? Because modern civilization runs on them. Every single financial transaction, from your morning coffee to a multi-billion-dollar stock trade, is time-stamped by a satellite clock. Every military operation, from a drone strike to a troop movement, relies on precise satellite positioning. Every Amazon package, every Uber ride, every FedEx delivery, it all hinges on this invisible network floating above our heads. If GPS were to go down, it wouldn't just be an inconvenience, it would be catastrophic. Wall Street would freeze, the global supply chain would collapse, power grids could fail. Essentially, the modern world would go blind and deaf in an instant. This is why these systems are guarded more fiercely than state secrets. They are the silent, beating heart of our interconnected world. But here's where it gets interesting. That government monopoly is starting to crack. Private companies are starting to muscle their way in, not by trying to build a new GPS from scratch. That would be insanely expensive and politically impossible, but by nibbling at the edges. They're offering complementary services. Imagine a private, ultra-secure backup system for Wall Street, ensuring that if GPS is ever jammed or spoofed, the financial markets don't implode. Some companies are building exactly that, offering private alternatives for ultra-precise timing. Others are developing niche navigation systems. Think of it like this. GPS is the public highway, free for everyone to use. These private companies are building exclusive, high-speed toll roads for military-grade clients, or high-stakes commercial operations that need accuracy down to the centimeter, not just the meter. We're talking about a level of precision that can guide autonomous tractors in a field with near-perfect accuracy or help a mining company map resources underground. This isn't about replacing GPS, it's about augmenting it, privatizing it, and monetizing it piece by piece. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. The real game changer, the next frontier, is Earth observation. For decades, the only ones who could get a high-resolution satellite picture of a specific location were governments and their spy agencies. That era is over. Welcome to the age of surveillance service. Companies like Planet Labs and Maxar have constellations of satellites that are imaging the entire landmass of the Earth, every single day. Think about that. They are creating a visual, searchable, day-by-day history of Woman the Scene show. This isn't grainy black and white spy stuff. We're talking about high-resolution, color images where you can see individual cars, shadows of buildings, and changes in landscapes over time. So, who buys this data? Everyone. A hedge fund in New York might buy satellite data to count the number of cars in Walmart parking lots across the country, using it as an indicator to predict quarterly earnings before they're announced. An agricultural giant might monitor crop health in Brazil to forecast soybean yields and play the commodities market. Energy traders can monitor the shadows cast by the lids on oil storage tanks to estimate global oil reserves in near real time. This is market intelligence on a planetary scale. And governments. They're some of the biggest customers. They use this commercial data to verify international treaties, monitor North Korean missile sites, or track deforestation in the Amazon. It gives them a layer of deniability and a constant stream of information without having to use their own classified spy satellites. When a natural disaster strikes a hurricane, an earthquake, a wildfire, rescue teams use this data to get an immediate bird's-eye view of the disaster zone, identifying which roads are blocked and which areas are hit the hardest. It saves lives. Here's the business model that makes it all so powerful. A single photograph, a single dataset, can be sold 10 times over to 10 different clients, each for a different purpose. The hedge fund, the government, the environmental NGO, the insurance company, they're all buying a slice of the same reality. We've officially moved beyond just connecting the planet. Now, we are watching it. Every field, every city, every port, every square inch, in near real time. The implications are staggering, for privacy, for security, and for power. The sky is no longer empty, it's filled with eyes, and we're just getting started. Stick with us for part 5, because we're about to enter an even wilder phase. Orbital maintenance. In space, refueling, debris removal, and yes, even the beginnings of cosmic tourism. If this has your mind racing, I want to hear about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button to let us know you're with us on this journey. And make sure you're subscribed, because what's coming next will change how you look at the night sky forever. Thanks for watching. Are you still with us? Awesome, because now we're diving into the real business of space. If you're enjoying this deep dive, do me a huge favor. Like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. Seriously, every click helps us bring you the stories that others miss. Alright, let's shift our perspective. We've talked a lot about getting satellites into orbit, but what happens after they're up there? Welcome to the newest gold rush, space servicing. For decades, a satellite had one job and one lifespan. When it ran out of fuel or a part broke, it became a multi-million-dollar piece of space junk. That old wasteful model is finally changing. Companies like Northrop Grumman are pioneering this field. They've developed mission extension vehicles, or MEVs. These are essentially spacefaring tow trucks that can dock with old but still functional satellites and give them a new lease on life. Think about it, they physically attach a service module to an aging satellite, providing it with fresh propulsion and control, extending its operational life by years. This isn't science fiction, it's happening right now, hundreds of miles above our heads. It's a game changer for telecommunications companies that rely on these satellites. Instead of spending hundreds of millions on a new launch, they can pay a fraction of that to keep their existing hardware running. It's like getting a new engine for your car instead of buying a whole new vehicle, and it gets even cooler. Other startups are tackling another huge limitation: fuel. Imagine running out of gas in the middle of a cross-country road trip. That's what happens to satellites. A company called Orbit Fab is on a mission to solve this. Their vision? To build gas stations in space. They are developing refueling ports and fuel tankers designed to operate in orbit. They want to create a future where satellites can be topped up with propellant, just like your car. Why is this so revolutionary? Because launching anything into space is incredibly expensive, and a huge chunk of a satellite's initial weight is just fuel for its entire mission. If you can refuel it in orbit, you can launch smaller, lighter satellites or equip them with more advanced instruments instead of a giant fuel tank. This opens the door to a completely new paradigm. Modular space infrastructure. We can start building satellites that evolve, that can be upgraded, repaired, and refueled, not just left to expire. It's a shift from disposable technology to sustainable, long-term assets in space. This orbital economy is the quiet revolution happening above us. Now, let's talk about the part of the space business that grabs all the headlines: space tourism. And no, we are not talking about a far-off sci-fi dream anymore. It's a reality. We've seen SpaceX send a crew of all civilian astronauts on a multi-day trip orbiting the Earth. Blue Origin, founded by Jeff Bezos, is regularly sending billionaires and celebrities on short, suborbital flights to the edge of space, giving them a few minutes of weightlessness and a life-changing view of our planet. Then you have Virgin Galactic, with its sleek spaceplane, promising suborbital joyrides for its paying customers. Of course, right now, a ticket to space costs a fortune. It's a playground for the ultra-wealthy. But let's not forget, air travel was exactly the same in the 1920s. A transatlantic flight was an unimaginable luxury reserved for the elite. Over time, as technology improved and competition increased, costs plummeted. Flying became accessible to almost everyone. The same trajectory is expected for space travel. The incredible engineering and infrastructure being built today to deploy global internet constellations and service satellites might one day be the same infrastructure that powers your family's space vacation. As launch costs continue to fall with reusable rockets, the final frontier will slowly but surely open up to more than just astronauts and billionaires. But here's the thing, tourism is just the flashy, glamorous tip of a much larger iceberg. It gets the public excited, but the real foundational business of space is logistics. It's about positioning, maintenance, and strategic dominance. Think of it like the early days of the internet. The exciting part was the websites and the content. But the real money and power were in building the infrastructure, the cables, the servers, the protocols. It's the same for space. The crucial question is no longer just about who can get to space. The new, more important question is, who can stay there, who can service their assets, and who can effectively monetize their presence in orbit. This is where the true power dynamics of the 21st century will be forged. And that brings us to the next critical chapter of this story, because as space becomes more accessible and more crowded, it also becomes more fragile. The very success of this new space economy creates a whole new set of dangers, and that's exactly where we're going in part 6, where we explore how space becomes not just profitable, but perilous. You absolutely do not want to miss it. So, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop your thoughts on space tourism in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned. So, here we are. The sky is full. The satellites are launched, the networks are online. But what happens next is a transformation even deeper than control. The sky isn't just a domain of science or military strategy anymore. The sky is becoming a marketplace. For decades, space was primarily about sending signals and watching the Earth. We sent up satellites for communication, for weather forecasting, for navigation. It was infrastructure, invisible, and mostly in the background of our lives. But we're now entering an entirely new phase. The monetization of space as real estate. Think about it for a second. Every orbital position, every communication frequency, every satellite slot. It's a finite resource. Just like land on Earth, there's only so much of it. And just like land, these orbital assets are now being claimed, sold, and rented. The silent, invisible infrastructure that has been humming above our heads for years is turning into the site of a massive, digital land grab. This isn't some distant sci-fi concept. It's happening right now. Private companies are already auctioning off bandwidth access to the highest bidder. Innovative new startups are emerging whose entire business model is to buy satellite time in bulk and then resell it, along with the data streams it produces, to smaller clients. They're like digital landlords for the skies. Even governments are getting in on this. Instead of launching their own expensive observation satellites, they're leasing observation time from private satellite constellations. It's cheaper, it's faster, and it's a sign of a fundamental shift in how we view space. And it goes even further. We could soon be talking about owning space lanes, specific orbital paths that are optimal for certain types of satellites. Owning one of these could become as strategically valuable and as profitable as owning a major port or a critical highway on Earth today. Imagine toll roads in orbit. That's the direction we're headed. What this means is something profound. The sky isn't just being filled with machines and technology anymore. It's filling with contracts. It's filling with subscriptions. It's filling with licenses, with brokers, and with intermediaries. We are building a complex financial ecosystem in low Earth orbit. And wherever you find financial complexity, you know what follows: speculation, fraud, and leverage. It's not a huge leap to imagine trading orbital futures on a stock exchange. You could buy a contract today for the right to use a specific satellite S-bandwidth a year from now, betting that the price will go up. This creates incredible opportunities for profit, but it also introduces a level of financialization that space has never seen before. We're turning the final frontier into a new financial frontier. But with every new asset class comes a whole new world of risk. Let's play this out. What happens if you buy the rights to a huge chunk of bandwidth on a satellite, and then that satellite gets disabled by a piece of space debris? Poof, your asset is gone. Who pays for that loss? Right now, nobody really knows. Or imagine your startup's entire service relies on leased orbital coverage from a private provider. You've built your business on their network. What happens if that provider decides to shut down your access? Or worse, goes bankrupt? What's your legal recourse? Can you sue for damages in a court on Earth for a contract that was broken in orbit? These aren't hypothetical questions for long. We've created a brand new multi-billion-dollar market with almost no insurance products designed for it, no established international courts to handle disputes, and absolutely no safety net. The rules of the road are being written as we go, and the early players are operating in a kind of Wild West environment. The sheer speed of this commercialization is outpacing our ability to regulate it. We're building a skyscraper of economic activity on a foundation that's still soft. The potential for catastrophic financial loss? for market manipulation, and for disputes that have no clear resolution, is enormous. This isn't just about big corporations and billionaires. This new space economy will affect everyone. The cost of your internet service, the accuracy of your GPS, the data that powers your favorite apps, all of it, will increasingly be tied to this new orbital market. The stability, or instability, of this market will have real-world consequences for all of us. So, who are the pioneers in this new gold rush? Who are the companies and investors betting fortunes on this space race, and what are they building? And, perhaps more importantly, what are the quiet legal battles that are already starting to be fought in orbit, far from the public eye? In Part 8 of our series, we'll dive deep into exactly that. We'll look at the key players trying to profit from this space rush, and we'll uncover the brewing conflicts that could define the next decade in space. If this exploration opened your mind to what's really happening above us, you know what to do. A like and a comment help us reach more people with this story. And make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this journey is just getting more real. Thanks for watching. So, we've established that the sky is a marketplace, a bustling frontier of satellites, data streams, and immense commercial value. But this raises a crucial question, one that is becoming more urgent every single day. What happens when there's a dispute? Who settles it? What laws even apply when you're hundreds of miles above the Earth? Think about it. Right now, there are no global courts for space. There are no orbiting police officers to call if something goes wrong. There isn't a single, unified legal framework that governs how companies or even countries should behave up there. It's the ultimate Wild West, but with higher stakes and much faster moving projectiles. This legal vacuum creates a fascinating, and frankly, a slightly terrifying dynamic. Imagine this scenario. A company's billion-dollar satellite is suddenly disabled. Is it a technical glitch? Or was it deliberately targeted? Or maybe a competitor's satellite network is jamming your crucial bandwidth, costing you millions by the minute. Who do you turn to? How do you prove what happened? In this new arena, the only real weapon isn't a missile, it's leverage. And leverage, in the high-stakes game of orbital commerce, often means one thing: lawyers, an army of them. We're already seeing the first shots fired in this quiet, legalistic war. Lawsuits are being filed over satellite spectrum rights, the invisible radio frequencies that are as valuable as prime real estate. Companies are publicly and privately accusing each other of orbital interference, claiming another satellite is drifting too close or blocking their signals. It's a cosmic turf war, but it gets even more complex. Some companies are playing a long game, quietly lobbying regulators on the ground to block their competitors before they can even get a single rocket off the launch pad. It's a strategy of preemptive strikes, fought not in orbit, but in the halls of government agencies. And behind the scenes, the deal-making is even more intense. This isn't just about corporate competition, it's geopolitics in disguise. Governments are trading orbital permissions, the right to place satellites, in a specific path in exchange for lucrative defense contracts or other strategic advantages. Think of it like a global chess match where the pieces are satellites and the board is the entire planet. We're also seeing billionaires using complex financial structures, licensing valuable spectrum through offshore entities to avoid public disclosure and regulatory scrutiny. It's a shadowy world of hidden agreements and backroom deals, a quiet war being fought over invisible lanes in the sky. This race for orbital dominance isn't just about business, it's a reflection of power dynamics here on Earth. Every country, from global superpowers to developing nations, wants to control its slice of the orbital pie. Access to space means access to communication, navigation, intelligence, and economic opportunity. It's the new high ground. But here's the catch. Only a select few have the technology and the immense financial resources to launch satellites quickly and at scale. So what do the other countries do? They can't compete with rockets, so they compete with rules. Instead of sending up satellites, they're sending lobbyists, lawyers, and forging alliances with private partners. The new space race is being fought in boardrooms and courtrooms. The battlefield isn't just made of metal and circuits, it's increasingly made of paperwork, contracts, and legal briefs. This entire system, this delicate balance of corporate interests, national ambitions, and legal loopholes is incredibly fragile. It operates on a foundation of unspoken rules and gentlemen's agreements. But what happens when that foundation cracks? What happens when this system finally breaks? We're talking about a scenario where satellites don't just interfere with each other, but actually crash. The debris from a single collision can create a cascading chain reaction, a Kessler syndrome event, that could render entire orbits unusable for generations. Imagine a world where our GPS fails, where global communications go dark, where weather forecasting becomes impossible. What happens when signals don't just get jammed, but collide in a way that creates widespread, unpredictable chaos? The very infrastructure of our modern world, from financial markets to emergency services, relies on the orderly functioning of these invisible systems. When the skies above start to mirror the political and commercial chaos down below, the consequences could be catastrophic. The question is no longer if this system will be tested, but asterisk when asterisk, and are we prepared for the fallout? This is where our journey takes its next critical turn. We've explored the market and the legal battles, but now we must confront the possibility of failure. In the next part of our series, we're going to dive deeper into what happens when this intricate system breaks down. We'll examine the real-world risks of satellite collisions, the cascading effects of signal failures, and the terrifying prospect of the skies above becoming as chaotic and contested as any conflict on the ground. The stakes couldn't be higher. Are you still with us? If you find this as fascinating and important as we do, make sure to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Stay tuned. Okay, we've seen the chaos. We've seen the greed, the fragility of the systems we built so high above our heads. But what if this isn't the final chapter? What if the crash, the blackout, the silence, what if that was just the beginning, not the end? Let's talk about the rebuild. Let's talk about how we can build a better future in orbit, one that serves everyone, not just a select few. First, we need to talk about transparency. Right now, most satellite constellations operate in silos. They're like walled gardens in the sky. Each company fiercely protects its data, hides telemetry information, and keeps any faults or near misses strictly private. It's a system built on secrecy, and we've seen where that leads. But what if they didn't? What if we created a global transparency protocol? Think of it like an open air traffic control system, but for space. A unified platform that could track all active satellites in real time from every nation and every company. It would allow us to independently verify safety margins, calculate collision risks, and flag potential threats long before they spiral into a catastrophe. The amazing thing is, we already have the tools to do this. We have the tracking technology, the data processing power. What's missing isn't the how, it's the why. It's the collective will to prioritize shared safety over corporate secrets. Imagine a world where every orbital path is public knowledge, where an amateur astronomer can spot a deviation and a global network can act on it. That's not just safer, it's a fundamental shift in how we see space. It's about moving from a private playground to a public utility. Second, let's address the massive issue of redundancy. The recent crisis taught us a brutal lesson. One company should never, ever control global internet access. One single point of failure, one glitch in one network, shouldn't have the power to bring down entire economies, to sever communication for millions. That's not progress. It's a ticking time bomb. The future networks we build must be designed differently. They must be decentralized, they must be interoperable, and crucially, they must be built for failure. We need to look back to the origins of the internet for inspiration. It was designed to survive a nuclear attack, a network of networks that could reroute information around damaged nodes. That's the kind of resilience we need in orbit. We can achieve this through decentralized mesh networks, where satellites communicate directly with each other, creating a web that's stronger than any single strand. We need to invest in robust, ground-based backups, fiber optics, high-altitude balloons, local networks so that if the sky goes dark, the world doesn't go silent. And we need to encourage hybrid constellations, where satellites from different companies and countries can seamlessly work together, picking up the slack if one system falters. This isn't science fiction. This is just responsible, intelligent engineering. It's about building a system that's as resilient and interconnected as the global community it's meant to serve. We can't afford to build another house of cards. Third, and this is perhaps the most difficult part, we need law, real, enforceable, international law. Right now, space is the Wild West. The existing Outer Space Treaty is a relic of the 1960s. Completely unprepared for the reality of mega-constellations and commercial spaceflight, we need a new international agreement, a Geneva Convention for Orbit. This treaty would establish clear, unambiguous rules on things like spectrum use, so that companies aren't just jamming each other's signals. It would mandate responsible debris removal, making companies liable for the junk they leave behind. Think of it like an environmental deposit. You launch a satellite. You have to post a bond to guarantee it's safe to orbit at the end of its life. It would also create strict protocols for satellite decommissioning, preventing the creation of more ghost ships in orbit. Maybe we even need something more radical, like an orbital court, an independent international body with the authority to settle disputes, enforce regulations, and impose penalties on those who break the rules. Without clear laws and consequences, we're just relying on the good intentions of corporations whose primary duty is to their shareholders, not to humanity. We need to establish that orbit is a shared resource, and like any other shared resource, from our oceans to our atmosphere, it requires governance, stewardship, and the rule of law. And finally, overarching all of this, we need a change in vision. For too long, we have seen space as a race. First, it was a race between superpowers, and now it's a race between billionaires. A race for dominance, for profit, for market share. But this mindset is what led us here, to the brink of orbital collapse. We need to stop seeing space as a frontier to be conquered and start treating it like a commons, a shared environment that we all depend on, whether we realize it or not. GPS, weather forecasting, global communication, climate science, these are pillars of modern civilization, and they all rely on a stable, safe orbital environment. We need to elevate our perspective and see space as something bigger than profit margins. It's a heritage, a scientific treasure, and a critical infrastructure for the future of our species. We must protect it, not just for us, but for every generation that will come after us. This requires a profound cultural shift. It means celebrating collaboration over competition. It means prioritizing long-term sustainability over short-term gains. It means teaching our children to look up at the stars, not as a territory to be claimed, but as a community to be joined. If we act now, the future of space doesn't have to be the dystopian, debris-filled nightmare we've just witnessed. It can be open, it can be secure, it can be shared. The path forward is built on these 4 pillars: transparency in operations, redundancy in design, laws for governance, and a new vision for our place in the cosmos. But none of this happens on its own. It starts with awareness. It starts with public pressure. It starts with conversations just like this one, happening in every corner of the world. So before we move on to the grand finale, before we look at the truly inspiring possibilities that await us in a well-managed solar system, I want you to pause, just for a moment. Think about the night sky, and ask yourself, what kind of sky do you want to leave behind? Thank you for watching. If this conversation resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. The more of us who are talking about this, the better our chances are of building that brighter future. See you next time. Let's bring this all back down to earth. We started this journey with a single, massive question: who owns the sky? For the past hour, we've been on a deep dive, navigating a universe of private empires, silent wars, and orbital monopolies. We've seen how systems can be hacked, how trajectories are becoming littered with junk, and how we're operating in a legal vacuum, a cosmic Wild West. And after all that, the answer to our question, well, it's not simple. The truth is, no one owns the sky, but that doesn't stop people from trying. That someone is constantly changing. One day, it's a government. The next, a multinational corporation. Then it's a billionaire with a vision, or a coalition of nations, and every single time, they bring their own version of control to the table. One group will tell you it's all about safety. Another will champion freedom. A third will be honest and just say it's about the money. But here's the real story, the one that gets lost in the headlines. Space is no longer just a final frontier for exploration. It's infrastructure. It's as fundamental to our modern lives as the roads we drive on, the water we drink, or the internet that connects us all. The moment we forget that, the second we start treating it like just another business opportunity, another gold rush, that's when we start losing the future. The decisions we make in the next 5 years will define the next 50. That's not an exaggeration. The orbits are filling up at an alarming rate. The number of satellites is multiplying exponentially, and the rules of the road, the policies that will govern this new domain, are being written right now. But they're not being written in parliaments or public forums. They're being drafted in corporate boardrooms, behind closed doors. If we, the public, don't get involved and shape this conversation now, we may never get the chance again. The window is closing. So, you might be thinking, this is huge. What can I possibly do? And that's a fair question. It starts small. It starts with staying curious. It starts with asking the hard questions when you see a news report about a new launch. It means supporting the idea of open infrastructure, space as a public utility, not a private playground. Think twice before you automatically cheer for the next mega constellation launch. Take a moment to understand the stakes, because the sky above us isn't just about science and astronomy anymore. It's about sovereignty. It's about our collective survival. It's a silent mirror reflecting our own ambitions, our conflicts, and our hopes. But here's the most important part. It's not too late. We're at a critical juncture, and we can still influence the outcome. We can still fight to reclaim the sky as a shared resource for all humanity. Thank you for watching this journey with me. I know we covered a lot of ground, but if this video sparked something in you, if it made you think, then please, share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I read every single one. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next, and most of all, keep your eyes on the sky. It's full of stories that no one is telling yet.